All right, episode 75, recording at Logan Avenue. Only one take on this. 1, 2, 3. Cheers.
Cheers to 75.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, welcome everybody to the episode or experience 75 of
Seat 1A podcast.
And what's unique about this one is obviously it's number 75, and to mark that, Geoff and I are in the same city, which is a rarity.
Yeah, we're both in Toronto. We're sitting out on a back patio and decided to record and take a slightly different way than normal.
Yeah, so this is pretty ad hoc. There's going to be neighborhood noise and, well, there was something coming out from Billy Bishop Airport just now, probably a Porter -8. It's gone.
Or some other medical or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, it's good to be in person. I haven't even had a sip. And yes, that was a beverage to cheers the libation for episode 75 that you heard at the beginning.
The food and drinks card is down the aisle.
That's right. And there are no charges on this flight. So a lot of travels, especially for yourself, just in the last few weeks here. I also traveled over to Toronto, so I think we're just going to dive in, as we say, flight now departing to the world of summer 2023 travel, which I think we coined our last one, the same one, but lots to go over.
The analysis.
Yeah. So obviously you have a lion's share of some travel. So where did you go? What did you do again?
So I started in Toronto. I flew to Frankfurt, then flew from Frankfurt to Vienna, then Vienna to Düsseldorf, then from Cologne to Istanbul, Istanbul to Bodrum, Turkey, back to Istanbul, then Istanbul to Vienna, and then the plan was Vienna to Toronto on a connection, but there'll be more about that later, because it didn't quite go that way.
Anywhere else you'd like to add into that? Because there's a lot of going on there already.
No, I think that's just that's the flight. That's where I was flying.
All right. So first leg was Toronto to
Frankfurt.
Yeah.
And so I had booked this one way back in February, and it was a really decently priced premium economy seat. And I decided to...
Which airline?
Air Canada.
Yep.
And the earliest one in the afternoon out of Toronto. So I decided to play the game and see, okay, can I try for an upgrade? Because there were some things I wanted to see, people I needed to visit, and I didn't want to be super out of it. So I knew of and had never actually fully used, but ExpertFlyer, which actually, when you pay you can pay month by month or you can pay annual, and you get an ability to see the load factor in different classes.
Yeah.
So what I was doing was I realized that, okay, well, let's say how many seats are available in business. And I had already placed a bid back in when I bought the ticket. And
so you were using the Air Canada bid upgrade system.
Exactly.
Internal, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I looked at it. I had bid once before in my life, way cheaper than I thought. And I got it when I flew with Scoot from Singapore to Berlin. So I thought I'll try this one. I checked. There was a number of seats available. I know that what I paid the dial for Air Canada was past half. So prospectively paid more than I should have. But I really wanted to guarantee myself that I would get the spot. And then 48 hours in advance, I get the email to say, yes, you're sitting in business, and I got the business seat. So
that's pretty good. Air Canada is usually pretty Fort Knox about all things upgrade. I mean, even if you're an employee, hoping to be placed up there, they really follow the rules. Like, to try and bend through them is a chore. So their bid upgrade system, I mean, it's pretty slick. The way they set it up. I mean, of course, you'd be willing to pay the prices, but assuming that's fine, then...
Yeah, I laid aside a budget because I was like, I want to try this. I want to try the product. I'd never tried the product before. I did premium economy last year, was satisfied with it, and I'm like, all right, if I don't get it, premium economy
Still great.
bulkhead seat was still a fantastic option. So, and so then I got the seat. And took the trip from my home out to the airport. And for those traveling through Toronto, I made an error that can occur. So if you take the train from Toronto, either the Union Station or of the few stations that are along the way to Pearson Airport, there are green tap towers or tap panels for the regular commuter train, and then there are blue tap panels for the Up Express, the Union Pearson Express. And I made the mistake of tapping a green one because it was the first one I saw when I got into the station, rather than tapping a blue one. So I tapped the blue one as well, only to realize that I had all of a sudden an open fare on the commuter train that I only recently got corrected and fixed and said, hey,
oh, right, because it thought you were hitting the first time.
It thought that I was going to take the regular train as opposed to the Up Express.
Yeah.
And it was very easy for them to resolve and see and figure out. So fortunately for that, and one that I should know, but I haven't done that particular train in a while, so I'd forgotten. Check-in was pretty straightforward, pretty easy.
Yeah, they're check-in areas. Yeah, it's exactly what you just said. Straightforward, easy. There's nothing glamorous about it.
But, I mean, I guess it had been a while since I had done international, or something changed on the international, because it used to be, it felt really crammed and tight in Toronto, because it used to be that you have a lot bigger space to do the international security. It's like you're right there as opposed to walking to the end and then into security.
Yes, I know what you mean. I think they moved it. In the initial opening of Terminal 1, it was down at the A end.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you'd have to kind of go up. But now it like feeds right in to the security checkpoint.
Right, yeah. So it felt really tight. It was really busy. A little bit chaotic. There were certain flights to South Asia at the same time, and a few people, I'm not sure if they jumped the queue or what was going on, but I'm just like, oh, okay, whatever. Yeah. Lounge experience, straightforward in Toronto.
Didn't you have a lady that was in the wrong spot? You sent me a message or something about a lady that was flying domestic that somehow ended up.
Yeah, that was crazy, because I go to check in at the lounge, and there's a woman in front of me, and to get to the international departures in Toronto, you have to go through a couple sets of gates and things.
And checkpoints, and it's quite a trek. Like it's a hammerhead of its own at Toronto.
But it's not, there aren't any real checkpoints. It's more of, are you flying to the U.S. or internationally? If it's the U.S., you would have had a checkpoint. But this woman in front of me, they look at her boarding pass, and they're like, where are you flying? And she said, well, I'm flying to Edmonton. And they said, well, this is the lounge for international flights. How did you get here? And she said, well, I just followed the signs.
Oh, man. And that... I'm just trying to think about that, because
that's a long walk.
That's a long walk. And the Air Canada domestic lounge at Terminal 1, you come out of the security checkpoint and
you have to take an elevator up to the
right there.
next
You
level.
don't even descend into the pit, the mosh pit, to follow whatever signs. Well, obviously, so she missed that and then just started following
who knows what,
because I don't think there's such a sign that says Maple Leaf Lounge International, go here,
or
until you get a little bit closer.
Or she looked at the wrong map.
Well, that's true.
Then, I mean, just simple chill out in that lounge, wander over. My seat was about row 5, I think was where my seat was.
What was the aircraft on this one?
That was a 777 ER 300.
Nice.
And the relatively... upgraded in-flight entertainment, so the larger screens. It was interesting. I had a woman beside me. Her daughter was also flying on the flight, and who was in premium economy, but she let her mother fly in the business class seat rather than her. And I mean, her mother had apparently done a lot of flights to Asia, and her daughter was like, just as a heads up, this business class in Air Canada does not have pajamas.
Right. True.
And I was like, I never thought about that, but yeah, that is right.
Yeah.
The duvet and the nice things and stuff are there, but that's it.
That's it for treats. And you mentioned it's a 777, and one thing I always remember, because I've flown on their business class on both the 787 and the 777. There's one distinct difference between the two. One has a whitish feel and one has a yellowish feel. Because the 777s are obviously not brand new ones. So all the lights are the older halogen lights. The bulbs and the ambient lighting is kind of got that yellow light, soft light. Dreamliner, etc., even on the Max, it's all like kind of that modern, bright, white, bluish.
LED.
Yeah. So it's a very different cabin feel, especially at night when they start turning the main aisle lights down.
Yeah.
But no, the Air Canada hard product is great. And I think, other reviewers have said it too. Like, it does well. It plays well, but it's not the best.
It's stereotypically Canadian.
Yeah, exactly.
It's good, but it's not top of class in the world.
Exactly.
And it was good food selection. Interesting on that flight, there wasn't a real introduction, like a hello from the purser, sort of personally. It just sort of felt like everybody was
really
like coming by with menus, but no names, no intros. Felt a little cold, or maybe a little bit rushed or something.
Yeah, I mean, the last time I flew that was Doha, Toronto. I don't know, because it's such a long flight, they had time to think all this through. And actually, even the following domestic connection, they would come around, just say hello, and that was, they have the manifest and they're reading your name off of it, and assuming you haven't swapped seats with anyone, then you are who you are. So, this is where you can see they start to not necessarily come up to world par, but that's okay.
Yeah. Attempted to sleep, even with the lie back. Wasn't successful, but got a chance to be in screensaver mode and have everything okay. Person behind me, he was knocked right out, and when we landed, I looked at him and I said, you knocked right out? What was your secret? He said, well, I just watched movies that I watched before.
Interesting. I never thought about that. Because you're not really having to pay attention. You couldn't care less.
Yeah.
That's a new one. We got to write that one down.
Well, that and a few extra beverages, but...
yeah. Okay.
And then arrived at Frankfurt. We were about 30 minutes early, so we got in... we pulled up about 5 to 6 as opposed to 6:30.
Okay.
And so I had bought 3 separate tickets on German Rail really cheap a few months before. So I was like, well, all 3 of these together are still cheaper than me buying it in real time at the station.
Yeah.
So then I was looking and I'm like, okay, and had about an hour and a half until the first train sort of went to north from Frankfurt. And I knew last year that I had done had a shower when I transferred from Cape Town to Frankfurt and flew on. So I was like, oh, let's check out the Air Canada Lounge, see if I can use the shower there.
This is on arrival.
And showed up, they're like, yep, showers for outbounds only. So obviously as a connection, it would have worked for me last year, but as an arrival, it didn't. It was a Lufthansa arrival lounge, but they don't take Air Canada passengers.
So how did you get to the Air Canada departure lounge? Were you dumped into like...
No, I went up the stairs.
This is after passport control?
No, it's before.
Interesting. And you were able to just do that?
Yeah, so I wandered down the hall, up the stairs, walked into the Air Canada lounge, and then departure level, and they were like, no. And then, fortunately, across the way, like literally straight across from the Air Canada one, is one run by Frankfurt Airport.
Like a generic.
a generic shower, and €6.
Oh, I think yeah. I've used this a long time ago. I thought it was all gone.
Yeah, it's there. Great, easy, straightforward.
And at that time of day, they would have been very clean.
They were very clean and empty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because nobody's
Nobody's there, and everything was fresh, so it was good.
Yeah.
So I did that, and then took everything because I had bought duty free. I had no checked in bags, so they didn't have any liquid. All right, so yeah, I mean, I got the commuter train down in the basement.
Oh, there's something about arriving into a European airport at that early hour. Everything's clean. Everyone's just come on shift. And what I love is that fresh smell of coffee pumping out of all the cafes, the lounges, whatever it may be. There's something kind of nostalgic about it. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, you mentioned that before, but there wasn't any that I noticed.
Yeah, I guess maybe because I'm always connecting for the most part. So I shoot myself back into the departure gate area.
Yeah.
And then it's...
Yeah, then you got all
there.
the stuff there, yeah. As opposed to the arrivals where it's like, yeah, just get out.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I haven't arrived into Frankfurt for years, like a long time. I would just remember it would be like this kind of darker area. The cabbies would be kind of lurking around.
Yeah.
They used to have like this adult shop on the side. And it kind of, well, there was a grocery store, but it was a strange, odd place. That's all I remember.
But the basement has definitely changed in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
So much. There's essentially a mall there now, but the nice thing is there's the one platform on the commuter side. It doesn't matter what comes; they're all going towards Frankfurt, and they'll all stop at the main station. I think it's platform 1.
Yeah, that's right. I remember different models of trains coming. I'm like, am I supposed to just get on anything? So
that was straightforward, easy. And then so then went to the Mitteleuropa Cafe in Frankfurt Hauptbahnhof. Down towards the one end by track 19 or 20 or so. It was kind of hot in there that day. They didn't have the air conditioning working right, but I mean, they had a wonderful €4.90, 2 baguettes and two croissants and a coffee.
That's pretty good, actually.
So I'm like, that's a heck of a lot better, and good Segafredo coffee, better than a McDonald's or something at that hour of the morning.
Yes, fair enough.
And, a chance to just sit down and relax. And then my train showed up. At that time, this summer, the trains between Fulda and Kassel are the main high-speed lines being renovated, so everything's taking an hour longer than normal. But, yeah, mostly harmless, mostly painless.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, European connections on the train. I mean, we've done that episode before, right? The rail fly and everything. It's just beautiful. Mm-hmm. It just works.
And then the weirdest one was I'm sitting in the train waiting because it was starting in Frankfurt, and some guy comes on the train and asks me for change.
Huh?
Yes.
Change for what?
Food.
As in, he was like begging.
Yeah.
On the train?
On the train.
How was he able to maintain being on the train? That's the question.
I don't know. And I was just fortunate that I was close to my laptop and hadn't sort of left it
yeah, no kidding.
To the side kind of thing. So,
yeah. All right. So then you went to
Central Germany, Kassel, Germany, visited some friends, came back. The following day, took the train down, slightly different route. Instead of over Gießen and Marburg, it went over Fulda and back through Frankfurt, got out at Frankfurt Station, and then caught another train out to the terminal in Frankfurt. And
so then you're doing a flight now to
Vienna.
Right, on Austrian?
On Austrian, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
And classic European A320.
Yeah, I remember you were sending me some of these regs, they were not recent aircraft.
Yeah, some of the regs were, 20 years old.
Yeah. I mean, these aircraft, these fleets that they use, and they're just doing these powerhouse, 1 hour, 2 hour flights, like back and forth. Like that's their lives, right?
And Austrian and Swiss being part of but part of Lufthansa. I think one of them was like, formerly owned by Lufthansa, and then, well, hey, we just sort of shifted the ownership, maybe for accounting. And so, straightforward. Had previously like checked in the night before, self bag drop at Frankfurt. I had bought some liquids, so I had to pack them and check it in, as opposed to the Toronto flight.
So they had the automated.
They had the automated thingy.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I remember the one thing I always remember with Frankfurt, long before anything automated like that, dropping a bag. And there's a distinct difference between European mentality of lining up and queuing versus North American. In North American, we all kind of just go into one queue and get served by the next available agent. Not just North America. The UK kind of does this too. But in Germany, and maybe it's changed now, you would just line up behind whichever counter you thought, like at a grocery store.
No, it was different because it was like
General queue
and take the next one. Or if you had pre-checked already and you gotten your tags at the self counter, just go to the drop off.
Right. Okay, good. That's good, because that was a very inefficient way of running an airport model.
Yeah. So that was that situation. Then, straightforward into. We are actually on the sort of like A2 or something. I think really far out. Had a realization that if you have no water at that particular gate, you have no hope, because like they're charging €4 for a bottle of water, and there's no fountains and there's no nothing to get anything.
Yeah.
And like it was a hot day, and it's just like, oh, whatever. So it was a little hellish, and then.
But at least you had a gate, like a jet bridge.
We had a jet bridge, yeah.
Okay, good. You went on the bus.
And the interesting thing was, just where that particular gate was, it was positioned where we didn't have to push back. We could just take off and drive forward right up to the taxi lines.
Sorry, no pushback.
Yeah, because we were right at the end.
So they just pulled the jet bridge back.
They pulled the jet bridge back, and we drove ahead.
That is rare. That is very rare. That's unique. That's cool.
Yeah, it was like, okay, I'm ready for pushback. Wait a sec, we're going forward.
Yeah. On its own power.
On its own power.
Huh. That'd be interesting to find out, like, the physical dynamics of that. Because obviously you have a wingspan that needs to clear a building.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to have to look at some airport schematics on that one.
Yeah, and then, easy flight, straightforward into Vienna.
Things red.
Yeah, pretty much. And land in Vienna, relatively straightforward. The connecting train underneath Vienna Airport is simple and easy. And the people I was meeting and staying with, they weren't available for a couple hours until after I landed. So
which station is it? East, west in Vienna?
I'm not quite sure I understand your question.
Sorry, meaning like the airport trains go to one station only, right?
No, they go to multiple ones, depending what kind of trains you get.
You catch.
If you catch the regular S-Bahn, like the one that's been there for years, or the CAT train, that goes sort of up and around Rennweg and Wien Mitte and sort of up the spine of the very busy parts of Vienna. But you can also, depending on when you land, there are trains that do cross-country service, to say like all the way to Innsbruck and Bregenz, that start at Vienna Airport, and their first stop will be at Hauptbahnhof.
Okay, got it.
So this particular one, I caught at Hauptbahnhof, and then wandered through Hauptbahnhof, caught the subway into the center of town, and proceeded to stop and get out at a Cafe Havelka, and enjoy a nice Viennese cafe.
Love it.
And then proceeded further to where my friends lived, and then the following morning catching the train from Wien Mitte, the regular S-Bahn, out to the airport, and flying on to Dusseldorf.
On Austrian
again.
Yeah.
Straightforward, check in, interesting thing in Vienna is that they've got a very nice looking check-in spot on the third level, but it's like, well, this is business only, and then you sort of have to go around to get to the economy check-ins.
Oh, so they put their glamour facing forward.
Exactly. Yeah.
Nice.
And so, self-check, whatever, drop your bags, away you go. Security, I find in Vienna is pretty good, pretty fast, pretty efficient. And then, it was straightforward again as well. A320, old plane, and get to Dusseldorf. We all get off, and 20 of us are standing beside the belt, and it says, okay, Austrian from Vienna, belt's going around and around. Belt stops. Austrian turns off. 20 people are like, what the heck? And we all wandered to the baggage maintenance or office in the airport. And, first person says, well, my bags didn't show up. And then they give them the form. Second person does. And then they look out and they're like, well, how many people are here? And they're like, see 25 people. Yeah. Then they pick up the phone and they're like, oh, yeah, your bags are going to be there in about 5 minutes.
What? Okay.
So we wander back out to the original belt that we'd gone to, and boom, our bags show up on the belt.
So what happened?
I have no idea. It's like
so that would have been a A320, right?
Yeah. I don't think it would have been a container offload. It would have been regular.
Yeah, exactly. Did they just forget a cart? Must have.
It would have been more than a cart.
Interesting.
It's like they forgot the flight.
Yeah. They just probably drove up and the guy got called away or something, and that was the end of it.
And, who knows, some carts are sitting on the tarmac or something.
Yeah. Lovely.
Dusseldorf is also relatively easy, pretty easy to get into. You take the monorail to the high-speed station, or you can take the one that's under the station, but that one takes forever. So go out to the high-speed station, catch the train there, meet a mutual friend that we have in Dusseldorf there, and then that was that. Straightforward, easy. Longer in the airport than I wanted.
Yeah.
Following morning was an early rise because I was leaving from Cologne, and so headed to the train station, took the train to Cologne, the fairground station, Messe Deutz, and then we were running tight. And so I get up and there's a train that pulls in, and I look at the time and I think it's the right one. And then we're going, and then I'm looking at the, a few stations later, I see the name on the, display, and I'm looking at the stations that we're going through, and I'm like, oh, I'm on the wrong one.
Oh no.
But then I get out at a place called Mulheim, which is a pretty busy station. And I'm like, I could theoretically align things, figure stuff out, get back and go again. But I was tired and just decided to head out and grab one of the classic cream colored taxis that are outside. And we ended up, driving on the Autobahn to the airport. So Cologne Airport, straightforward, quite nice.
It's not a major hub.
Not a major hub, but reasonable.
Yeah.
Turkish had to, even though I had checked in early, there wasn't a bag drop. You essentially had to go through the line again.
Queue up with everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, that's lame.
But it could have been just where I was flying from. If I was flying, say, from Frankfurt, maybe there would have been a drop. Who knows? Mm-hmm. Or they maybe wanted to check documents or whatever to make sure, just because we're entering Turkey.
Right.
And then an interesting thing is, like, I was in Terminal 2, then I walk back to Terminal 1 to go through security. And then on the other side of security, essentially, I'm walking back to Terminal 2 to clear passport control and get on the planes.
Okay.
So there was a bunch of extra walking that didn't feel like it was necessary, but
interesting logic there.
That was the way that it was. Yeah. Turkish, relatively, what were we on? We were on a 320 or 21 Neo, I think it was, off the top of my head. Warm food service for a whatever it was.
Class.
Yeah, for economy class for a 3 and a bit hour flight.
Yeah.
And decent selections for in-flight entertainment for international routes, a decent amount of selection for movies and things. And we land in Istanbul, and man, I mean, going on that runway, I've been on the Polderbaan in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
It just goes on and on and on and on.
On and on.
And I was expecting to arrive at a gate, but then we arrive and there's a bus.
Classic.
On a hot day in Istanbul at 30, whatever it was.
Yep.
But, I mean, understandably so, because if we'd had to go to a gate, they did it purposely so we didn't have to walk as much.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Because
the bus would have centralized you.
Yeah, so it'll take us to passports and whatever.
Yeah.
And so go through passport control, and there was a few people that got turned back. I had printed the e-visa that I needed, and the woman at the passport control was like, well, you don't have the visa. I'm like, I have it. She didn't ask for anything else, and she just stamped me and let me through.
So you actually could have not really had it.
Yeah, theoretically. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so the passport wandered through, and then, realized how big it was. You wandered down to multiple levels and figuring things out and finding spots. And then it's like, oh, another bus as we head out to Bodrum. And they drive us out, and I'm trying to remember what my
you drove up to Bodrum?
No, the plane, we drove to the plane to Bodrum, so the bus took us out, yeah.
Got it, yeah. I was like, that'd be a bit of a long bus ride.
And I believe we were, for that one, I think we were 777.
From Istanbul to Bodrum?
From Istanbul to Bodrum, yes.
Wow. Was the thing full?
Yes.
That's incredible.
Or was, no, wait, hang on. Let me back that up. No, so that flight wasn't a 777. The flight back was.
Okay.
So the flight down was I think it was a 321 Neo.
Got it. Okay.
But still, it was full.
Still, the fact that 777 can be filled out of that.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a popular tourist.
So it was full, and then so we, took a hour-ish flight, and uneventful, land in Bodrum. Surprise, there's a bus, but a person is standing at the bottom of the stairs with a sign that says, if you've connected from international, get on this bus.
But you've already cleared passport control.
Yes, but my luggage.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay.
So we, if I had gotten on in Istanbul, I would have gone to a different terminal. But myself, I had to go to a different terminal, sort of the transfer belt.
Yeah.
For everybody who was transferring through Istanbul, that's where the suitcases showed up. Turkey being one of the countries in the region that doesn't have sanctions against Russians, there were a lot of planes from various parts of Russia landing in Turkey at that time.
I think I mentioned that in the last experience, that one memory I had.
And then a lot of ones from the UK as well.
Yeah.
Relatively straightforward. And you could definitely tell on the way out when people are waiting for tours and whatever with their signs, lots of OVs in the writing of the names. Driving into Bodrum, relatively straightforward. Traffic got crazy for a bit, but we ended up very nice location in Bodrum. Spent a week there. Beautiful seaside, hot weather, but lovely.
I had great memories of Bodrum. I mean, it's been a long time since I've been there, but it was fantastic. Just, all things vacation, sun, sand, Turkey.
Yeah.
Yeah, really nice.
Exactly, and wonderful food and great service staff at the hotel I was at, and wonderful history. So it was great, and a bunch of friends that you and I both know, and then we all proceeded back to Istanbul. We had a 10 a.m. flight, so we left Bodrum at 8 in the morning. No, it was 11 o'clock flight, so we left Bodrum about 8.
Okay.
All headed out there, back out to the terminal, all dropping off everything, just trying to remember how that...
And this is where the 777 came in?
Yeah, so it was a 777 from Bodrum to Istanbul.
That's only what, hour?
It's an hour flight, yeah.
That's it.
But it was a Friday morning.
Huh.
So I'm guessing a bunch of people probably flying out to make connections back for wherever for
After their weekday stint there.
yeah. So
Holiday,
then transfer in Istanbul and fly off to goodness knows where.
Yeah.
It was a reminder of being in the region where you have the security at the door of the airport. Realigning everything that you put in your bags. It's like, oh right, we have to do this, and then do the check-in and work our way through. And security was pretty straightforward. I had the thing go off where they swipe your hands, and they swiped my hands, but then they seemed to forget about me.
Oh. Like you were just standing there and everything just kept on going?
So, they did the wipes on the hands and put them in whatever, but nobody said anything. And I'm like,
what did you...
I'm like, eventually, I'm like, I don't know, nobody's waiting for me, so I got a flight to catch. So
Gotta go.
And took my bags and left. Then the flight, that flight was full. I was in a exit row, so that was nice and a lot of room, and was really tired, but managed to wake up for a hot cheese and tomato sandwich.
On the 1 hour flight?
On a 1 hour flight.
I'm impressed. That's good. That's very good. Yeah.
And that they managed to get the food service done that quickly.
With that size of plane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The arrivals, straightforward underneath. We all met up and wandered out. Of course, being the type of airport, once you depart the airport, no going back in.
No turning back.
Exactly. Right. And spent a couple of days in Istanbul, which is an absolute madness of a city, and all the historical sites. And then the last night I was in Istanbul, my flight was leaving the following morning at 10 to 8 to Vienna. So I stayed up all night, packed up, left, went out to the airport. Really cheap, actually, for a 30-minute ride. It was like 30 US.
It's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when we get there, there's a bunch of doors to get in, but there was some sort of police thing going on that they had all the other doors flagged off. And we could only go through door number 1
of this massive
airport. Yeah. At whatever it was, 5:15 in the morning or whatever, and when I got there.
Yeah.
And then, of course, run through security again when you get in. And then because I'd had a business class ticket, there was all of these pillars that are all saying Turkish economy, Turkish economy, Turkish economy. I'm like, well, where's the business one? And it was way down, sort of in the middle, but because I was so far
end
over,
of it, so you had to trek to it.
Yeah. And I mean, nice check-in experience, sofa to sit on kind of while you're at the check-in counter.
Really?
And the first spot I went to, it was like, well, here to give ID. And they're like, well, are you flying directly to the US, Canada, or the UK? And I said, no. They're like, well, you don't have to be in this line. You can just go over there. So then wandered over. And because I had a points ticket, Turkish could pull the boarding pass for the Turkish flight. And because of the fact it was a points ticket, I couldn't get the Turkish boarding pass online when I was checking in because it was with the Aeroplan.
Yeah, I remember we've hashed this one out before, and this is where things are going to start unraveling for you, I think.
And Turkish couldn't get the boarding pass downloaded from Air Canada when I was checking in. They said, well, you can pick it up at the gate when you get to your gate in Vienna.
Now, did you try using the Air Canada app?
I used both.
And did Air Canada produce a boarding pass for
you?
No,
because they're like, Turkish is who you're starting with.
How very odd. Okay, continue. We'll have to come back to this point.
So lovely. It had been a points ticket upgrade, a points ticket early in the year, so really good rate, and was sitting in 3A on Turkish. So lovely product, good food service.
What aircraft was this one?
This one was a brand new, I think it was a Dreamliner that I was in. And very, very straightforward, very easy. But the issue was when I was checking in. We'll back it up a little bit. So I went to the departure lounge in Istanbul, which is in the middle, and very nice, easygoing, but obviously a different lounge experience than you had in Istanbul because you were in the connecting.
Why couldn't you go to the super lounge?
Because I wasn't connecting.
But that's not a connection lounge. That should have been just.
So I was in the departure lounge.
So were we.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. Maybe
I'm curious what the rules are here.
But I don't know which lounge you were in. I was like upstairs, sort of in the middle.
Yeah, overlooking everything, where people are giving you massages and stuff.
Not that I remember.
Maybe. There was like multiple chef stations and like a tea room and all these sorts of things.
Well, there was chef stations, tea room. Don't remember. Maybe I went to.
Did you go up an escalator?
I did.
I think it must have been the same lounge.
Yeah. So maybe I was super tired and did not notice.
Okay, so you went to the lounge.
Yeah, and it didn't seem as busy as I thought it might, but it was still lovely. And then I'm looking at my watch and looking at the time that they say it would take for me to get to my gate, and it's like, okay, well, I better go. And of course, I was dead tired. And in the middle of Istanbul airport, you have to walk a lot.
Yes.
There's a very, very large concourse.
Yeah, I mean they have the moving walkways, but
that's only when you start getting out into the fingers of the terminal, and I was just like, God, like,
and it all starts to look the same because there's no natural light necessarily. It's all like that lit ceiling
and filtered light through the
and then shops. I mean, but duty free all just looks like duty free.
Yeah,
endless amounts of it.
Yeah,
so you can really get turned around over there.
And figuring, okay, I was out in finger B, I think was where this particular one was, and okay, keep going and keep going and keep going, and another moving sidewalk, and get to the end, and then stuff with the line was moving fairly well. They had checked people in, and then I give my pass. They beep me in, and I get a red light on the check-in.
Okay,
and they're like. And there was a few other people standing around, and they're like, yeah, you're flying to Toronto. We don't think you'll make the connection in Vienna based on timing, so you should stay here another day. And in my head, I'm like, so if I stay here another day, I have no guarantee that tomorrow's going to work any better.
Something that... I've never heard this before, where they just say, you know what, you should just stay.
Yeah, I'm like, what, is this like some sort of extra tourism thing where they want me to pay for an extra night at a hotel?
But why were you not connected? Because this flight was late?
Because this flight was throughout my plane was 3 hours late arriving from Taipei.
Oh, so how late were you now at this point?
Well, we were still on time, but then we sat at the gate for an hour before we could get a flight slot from Eurocontrol to fly to Vienna. So we didn't push back for an hour.
But they knew this when you were boarding. Yeah.
And they said, well, it would be on you. But I'm like, no, it's on you, because it's like...
Your plane is the one that's screwing this up.
Exactly. And they're like, it's not our fault if you somehow miss your connection. I'm like, you knew it this?
That doesn't, they're trying to pull the wool over your eyes on that one.
And so myself, and there was like 6 or 7 other people, we were like, look, we're looking at the timings. We've got the alerts from Air Canada. We know the inbound to Vienna is late.
The Air Canada,
the Air Canada was an hour and a half late or something. So we were like, we can still make this. So
it might all work out.
Check us in.
Yeah.
So they checked us in, but then the issue was sitting for the hour on the tarmac, or sitting for the hour at the gate, messed everything up.
But when you were sitting for that hour, was there an aircraft there?
We were in the aircraft.
Oh, I see.
So I've had it happen to me at LaGuardia before, where it's like, you need to get the clearance to take off, and just couldn't get takeoff clearance.
Out of Istanbul.
Okay. Probably because of all the Sunday travel and all the tourists in Southeast Europe on holiday vacations. And also, I'm guessing, probably due to rerouted routes because ones that would normally go over Ukraine have to go over Turkey.
Yes, exactly. So you're sitting in business class, though.
So I'm sitting in business class, and it's all nice, and they're all doing what they can, and it's all nice and comfy.
Crew has something to do with this.
And
they're just doing their job.
And I mean, myself being dead tired because I hadn't slept the night before because I didn't think I needed to. Then it's like we eventually take off, we land, and I'm like, oh, this is all going to work. And then we just keep going along in Vienna, along the taxiway, and then we stop, and it's a remote stand.
Oh, stupid, dreaded bus.
And so we...
Hang on. If you had not gone to remote stand, would there have been any hope in making this connection?
I have absolutely no idea. Because I will never fly Vienna Airport again as a connecting airport.
Yeah.
If I can connect, I mean, Frankfurt is horrible, but at least it works.
Yeah.
Munich, Zurich, yes.
Yes,
Vienna,
they work.
I've made a comment. I'm like, it's good for landing, good for takeoff, but geez, the airport for me feels like a shoebox. Because it's tight, there's no light, and like the box top is on, and you're all really, really narrow and extra crammed in when you really shouldn't be.
Yeah.
So I have not much nice to say about connecting in Vienna. So then we get there, and we all land at this bus gate. The bus takes us through. Regular passengers clear security, or clear passports, which is probably maybe what I should have done instead of going through security and waiting for another bus. Because then we wait another 8 to 10 minutes for another bus to pick us up from this particular spot to take us to another spot in the airport, which was still nowhere close to where our plane was. And we still had to get through the airport. And horrifically is a bad word, but having to take stairs between floors.
Like what you did in Frankfurt earlier in the trip.
No, I mean, but that was by my choice. But this was like the only way you can get here is you have to take stairs. And the same, and in other parts of Vienna airport, it's like, there's a washroom or a toilet in this part of the airport, but you have to go down a flight of stairs to go to the toilet. So
it is not accessible, friendly.
It's like, I'm sure it must have won architectural awards, but it's an absolutely horrible airport for...
Yeah. It's funny how these older airports,
this isn't an older airport. This terminal is like...
Is it a new section?
15 years old at the most. It's newer than Toronto Terminal 1.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The old one. I mean, I knew the old one.
That's the one I'm familiar with.
Like but the new one... Yeah, the newish one, I have nothing nice to say.
Okay. So you're trying to huff it to get to the airport.
So then we do it. We run down the G finger of Vienna, and there was an American guy, and I was behind him, and he gets there, and then looking up, and he's like slicing his hand across his neck, and we're just like, oh man. And the plane is there. The jet bridge is still there, but they're like, we've closed the gate.
Yeah.
It's like, but you knew you had
people running
8 connecting passengers from Istanbul.
Huh.
Was it a case of that there were more passengers connecting in Toronto that would have been more of a pain in the butt?
Yeah, sometimes I've been in this position before. I have to make those judgment calls. I'm wondering if they actually had the data from Turkish as to your status.
But the problem is, it's Star Alliance.
Well, yes.
And that's the part that irritates, where it's like, if you are going to be an alliance and you are offering services between each other,
then you should provide.
Exactly. You should be, your airport should give good interconnection. Yeah. And prioritize linking through. I realize Turkey and other parts of Europe may not be on great political terms, but it's like, if you're in an alliance, you have to figure out how to make each other work.
And the whole thing about, and you see like memes and things on TikTok about people getting to close gates. What does it mean when the flight is closed? What that actually means is they've closed in the system in terms of saying these are the people who are on board, and that's the end of it.
Yeah.
All the weight and balance, all of that, all the fuel calculations are now set in stone. And that's why they say they cannot just simply open a flight.
Yeah.
If it was like one individual, if you, how many people were you trying to?
I think it was 8 of us.
Yeah, that's probably also why. If it was just you solo,
Yeah.
you may have been able to convince them.
My bag wouldn't have made it.
Nope. Yeah, exactly. If they probably would have had you sign off on that, and if you were willing to do that, then fine. But for 8 people, that's a full recalculation of
that's whatever it is. We're like 5 guys and 3 women or something. It's like you're
plus the bags.
Yeah. So you're looking at based on terms like 1,000, like 1,500 pounds or something, right?
Yeah. So now was it an air? Well, obviously it wasn't Air Canada staff. It's Austrian handling.
It's Austrian staff doing the gate handling.
Yeah.
And then so they were saying to some that it's like, most it was like, it's Turkish's fault, so go talk to Turkish. But then me, I'm like, this was a points ticket. They're like, you got to call Air Canada. I'm like, all right.
So I remember you mentioned that. That puzzled me because, sure, it was purchased that way. But at the end of the day,
I learned later.
You're just simply, it doesn't matter how you paid for the flight. You are now a passenger on said flights.
Yes.
And you're connecting, misconnecting, whatever, and they should be taken care of. So sounds to me like a bit of a BS answer from their part.
So then it was like, all right, let's figure things out.
So the Air Canada flight's gone now.
Yeah, and the Austrian customer service, was not great. I mean, you had people sitting at a desk, people doing whatever, people like, okay, it's my break, I'm leaving, even though there's like 8 people waiting for service. I'm like,
Classic.
I knew Austrian service. I'm like, or like general Austrian culture. I'm like, it didn't necessarily surprise me, but I'm like, here we go again kind of thing with like Star Alliance and whatever. You've got people who missed. And
so sending you back to Turkish, there is some validity in that because they're the
airlines who caused the problem.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'll get back to that part later. But so first thing was I was like, okay, where do I do? Who do I call? What do I do? What do I figure out? And then I just decided, let's clear customs. Let's try to figure out my bag first.
Which your bag theoretically is now going into stasis.
Yeah. So I cleared passport control, and they're like, how long are you in Vienna for? I'm like, I don't know. They're like, for a day, hopefully no more than a day. And I think they kind of chuckled and they knew what was going on.
Yeah.
But managed to get out and check the Turkish belt. Nothing was there. And then there was a sort of a center, sort of like the one in Dusseldorf, where it's like, okay, like I've landed, my bag is screwed up. Can you help me out?
Yeah.
And here's my tracking number. And then they were like, so go back in, belt number 10. It'll eventually.
Pop out. So they needed like a worker to physically go find this bag and pull it out. Exactly.
So it took a while, probably 20-ish minutes for that bag to pop out. But I was like, all right, at least I've got all of my dirty, stinky clothes.
That's pretty good because as soon as that you didn't board that Air Canada flight, your bag tag went dead.
Yeah.
Like that was the end of the journey. There's no way to track it. But I mean, at least they were probably able to see it was last scanned at, belt or cart or whatever.
Yeah.
So they were able to send someone to go get it. That's good.
Yeah. And so got that. And then it's like, all right, what do I do? And so I cleared out and Vienna, because it is so narrow in the spots that the only spot in Vienna airport that really feels that they've spaced out really well is security. Everything else feels tight. So proceeded to get some food, to try to make a few checks and whatever, figuring things out. Tried to do a purchase of a SIM card, but I screwed something up and it didn't work right. So I was ending up using my Canadian one. I'm like, all right, here comes the bill next month. And then proceeded to look online, surf online, trying to figure out Air Canada. What do I need to do? And finding, numbers and things to call and overseas numbers. And so I was starting to call toll-free numbers. And then they were like, well, you need to have, pins and things set up. And they weren't set up right. And I thought they were. And then they weren't recognizing it. And the other irritating thing that I commented to Air Canada was, you have a voice recognition menu, and you're in an airport.
Doesn't work.
It doesn't work. And it kept screwing up because he kept hearing all the noise from other people and other announcements. I'm like, just give me something to push. Don't go for voice, because that just doesn't work. Called numbers for Canada, took your advice for calling other countries. So there was also a UK number that I called. And each time I'm like, okay, here's my number, and have the callback option. And I knew it was going to be a while. And the issue with Aeroplan was that they weren't open until 7:00 Eastern time, which meant I had to wait a half hour, an hour for it to open. So I went and got food, and then found a spot on the 3rd floor beside a plug-in for my phone, had my luggage all in a belt, and just proceeded sitting up against the wall for
this became your command center.
Yeah, pretty much for like 3 hours.
And what happened? Did you go to try and find Turkish like they asked you?
They didn't tell me to go ask Turkish. They told everybody else, because they had like
all the
regular
other
tickets.
8 people. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because mine had been points booked, and there was essentially like a Turkish PNR and an Air Canada PNR. They told me I needed to call.
I wonder what would happen if you just blindly went to Turkish and be like, help me out.
Oh, I'll get to that later.
Oh, okay, good.
So eventually, well, there was a couple calls that came from Air Canada, but there wasn't any voice. There was no connection. So I got the call back, but the callback didn't work right.
So like there's usually the recording saying, hello.
Yeah, so but it's like it picks up, and I'm like, hello, 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 and nothing happened. And then eventually I was getting so irritated and ticked off. I was at the ticket machine to buy a train ticket to go into Vienna, and my phone rings, and I'm like, okay. And I get
a callback.
The callback, and I get Mina on the line from Air Canada, who is my savior, because she says, okay, first of all, ignore the fact you have 2 PNRs. That's normal. So don't worry about that. And so then she's like, okay, go check. And then I'm like, okay, I went up to Austria and I started asking things. And she's like, yeah, nothing they can do. Go find Turkish. So Turkish is in Terminal 1. So having to go through, and it was old terminal. And so I lined up at the check-in desk.
She's on the phone with you
She's
the whole
on the
time?
phone with me the whole time.
Holy, wow.
And so she's like, okay, so then I stay in line, and then I'm checking in, and unfortunately at the same time, there's a flight to Ankara and a flight to Istanbul going. So it's an absolute madhouse, going on. And then they're like, well, we can't help you here. And then she's like, yeah, go back to the ticketing guy. And so there's one guy just absolutely haggled and harried and absolutely stressed out.
Oh, for sure.
He's like, look, I've been looking for like this guy from Toronto since this morning. You should have come to me earlier. I'm like, look, I didn't know I was supposed to come to you earlier. I'm sorry.
So you were supposed to go there from their side.
From their side, I was supposed to.
Yeah.
But he was like very unfriendly, very opposite the feeling you get from Istanbul airport.
Yeah.
And he says, well, I maybe you should just fly back to Istanbul. I'm like, seriously, dude.
What?
Fly back to Istanbul is start over or something, I guess.
Okay.
And in my head, I was thinking there was one experience we did where you were like, always move forward. And I'm like, that was in my head. I'm like, I am not backtracking.
Go back. Yeah.
I
Just
am
keep
going forward. I'm going to
Progress.
figure this out.
Yeah.
And so then I tell Mina, I'm like, look, this guy, he's not helping me at all. He's not giving me a ticket. He's super busy. He's not interested in helping me out. And so she finally says, look, I'm going to talk to my ticketer, and we're going to purchase and redo the route for you from Air Canada. So we're buying it internally for you and redoing your ticket. Whereas Turkish should have been the one that should have been
doing it.
paying for it.
Okay.
So then eventually she comes back with me. She's like, okay, we've got a rerouting. Okay. Can you leave Vienna tomorrow morning at like 5 to 7? I'm like, whatever. I'm dead tired. Sure.
Yeah.
And so Vienna to Barcelona.
Okay.
Barcelona to Toronto.
And Vienna, Barcelona was on who?
Austrian.
Okay.
So then then we wait. She checked through everything, and it's like, okay, it's all booked through. Your seats checked on Air Canada. Go check in with Austrian because we don't have access to their seat maps. Mm-hmm. And so when I was done, Austrian, because at that time it was already after 6 p.m., I went to the desk. I'm like, hey, can I do an early check-in for tomorrow morning?
Yeah.
And they let me. And they gave me the the boarding pass
cards.
and
Right.
everything else.
And she was still on the phone with you.
Well, she had disconnected by that point. By the time I confirmed that it's
how long was this call?
an hour.
Good thing you charge your phone.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean,
And no headset or anything. You're just like,
yeah, my headset,
hand-holding
the earbuds thingies had screwed up earlier in the trip, so they weren't working right.
so you're literally just hand holding a phone, wandering around the airport with this woman on the other end.
Yeah, pushing my cart.
Okay.
So then did that, checked in, went into town, visited a mutual friend of ours, crashed at his place overnight. If it had been a case of where I was looking for a hotel and not being familiar with Vienna, I probably would have. But I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'm so tired. I don't care. Following morning, woke up at like 20 after 4, back out to the airport, checked, had like the hand luggage check stickers or whatever put on, and then proceeded to go through security. When I get through security, I'm walking to the gate, flipping through my passport, and I'm like, okay, here's my passes, here's my passport, where's my Nexus card?
Oh, no.
So then...
When was the last time you saw it?
I couldn't remember. I'm like, is it in the train?
Or maybe it's on the beach in Bodrum.
No, I knew I had it like when I
Started that day.
Yeah, when I started in Turkey, I knew I had it.
Okay.
And I think I knew I had it when I left Vienna, like when I left, woke up in the morning. But then as I go back to security, I'm like, do you have an ID card or anything? And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay. And then back out through, they let me back out. And then I go back to the check-in desk and there it is sitting by the desk. And the check-in guy's like, looks at me, kind of winks and is like, yeah, gives me the boarding pass or gives me the Nexus card. And then I proceed back through security.
Again. Oh my goodness. And you're lucky this is Schengen to Schengen. Like there's no passport control.
Yeah. But I would have figured it out at passport control that I didn't have it.
True. Okay.
So then, through security a second time, they had to manually pass me through because I'd already beeped through once. And, there was 4 rows of business class in, Euro business style. I was in 1D, so I was right up against the bulkhead, so really tight. So not really feeling like a business seat, but a spare seat beside me, whatever. And then, but I mean, I had champagne, sparkling wine for breakfast, so it was perfectly fine. And then landed in Barcelona. Had never been to Barcelona before, but I like it. Very bright and glassed and lots of
and the signage is very good.
Yeah, the signage is wonderful, and it's a wonderful. It's the opposite of Vienna.
Right. Yeah, and they follow like the UK signage, like the black and the yellow.
Or they had colors. I mean, like some of the color, like D was yellow, like one was purple, one was yellow, one was green or something. So you knew like it was different.
Yeah.
But easy to read signage, easy to figure out. Got to the end, figured out where my plane was, but I was like, well, I just want to find a lounge here just for a little bit. And then realized that I had walked right past it after I had cleared passport control. Passport control in Barcelona was great because there was a guy standing at the start of the line, like literally telling everybody like 12, 7, 5.
Like a
desk.
queue miner.
Yeah, like
good.
And it was like, it moved fast. There was everybody, EU and everybody was going through the same line. Because it was international connections, but the queue moved very quickly.
Yeah.
And then, so I found the lounge, tapped in, and had some nice Jamón Ibérico and some nice cheese and a few things to refresh after all the insanity. And then worked my way back to the airport, to my gate, and I boarded my flight. Was 7K. So
we're back on Air Canada.
Back on Air Canada, 777 again, I think it was. Yeah. And, straightforward. Nice, into Toronto, slept a couple hours. And on this flight, it was nice. The purser came up specifically and said, hello, Mr. Dahl. I'm so-and-so from, the purser for this flight. And I was like, good. That was, I mean, not that I'm expecting it, but I didn't get in on the other one. I was just like,
so it's a bit inconsistent.
Yeah. But I was just like, I felt like it was like, I felt appreciated more on that fun than I did on the Frankfurt one.
Right.
Even though I looked like hell. And then arrived back in Toronto, straightforward. I had Nexus, so cleared that quickly. And because my bag had priority, was out pretty quick. So I was maybe waiting less than 10 minutes for a bag in Toronto, and then headed home and found out that my internet wasn't working.
Lovely.
So all in all, the last 48 hours were
pretty eventful there.
Were eventful, but I knew it would all work out.
But there was one little thing you said about 2 PNRs being booked from that points ticket to Turkish and Air Canada.
Yeah.
So that, I think episode 3, that's what we talked about, is never book separate tickets. But it seems like, as you said, you may have an alliance, but it operated in that same scenario.
And Amino, love her because she obviously, she could tell that I had a decent idea what I was talking about. She's like, look, because it's a separate airline, they're going to have their own PNR. We're going to have our PNR, but they're all under ours. They're just starting with theirs.
I would be curious what your e-ticket numbers looked like.
Yeah, that was also an issue.
Yeah, because you have different e-tickets being associated with different PNRs.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, it was a great
Sounds to
experience.
me like a general statement is that Turkish and points travel, they're not there yet. Something's not.
Turkish and, Turkish back end and other Star Alliance members back end, I've heard from other people as well, don't line up. I think.
Mm-hmm. We even just look at your seat selection.
Yeah.
At the beginning. And this is something I experienced 4 years ago. Exact same thing.
And I think, I'm not saying necessarily because Turkish wants to fly everywhere that they're like, well, we're just going to bring everybody into Istanbul. And even though we're a member of Star Alliance, whatever. But it's like, well, if you're going to, sure, you fly everywhere, but at least play well with other members on your team.
Exactly. Yeah. Crazy.
Turkish in-flight was lovely.
Did you get the chef hat? Service?
No, I was flight was too short.
The service.
No, it was, it was a crazy flight.
Oh yeah, these are all your Turkish flights. Well,
it was 3 hours. It was whatever, but we were like late leaving and it was breakfast.
To Barcelona?
Istanbul to Vienna.
Vienna. Yeah, that's not a terribly long flight, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we had good service anyway, but,
yeah,
not long enough to make it anything
extraordinary.
I think
in the one flight that we did, or 2 flights we did in 2018, I did a ton of research. 2019, tons of research. I'm looking forward to all these little perks and tricks that put them, they're in a very decent playing field. And one flight sort of had it, the other flight sort of didn't, and it was just so inconsistent across the board. It sounds like it hasn't been fixed yet. Yeah.
But ground service, good in both Bodrum and Istanbul. Bus service was good.
Yeah.
Quick service. Buses were there right away. Buses were quickly moving people back and forth, and not a lot of issues. And staff in flight were wonderful.
Yeah. That's great. And that's the end of it, I guess. So then just back in Toronto, and here we are.
Back in Toronto and trying to get back into normal life. And then earlier today, finally, because I had to use the Go Transit another day, I was checking my history, and they're like, all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, now you've actually done the closing portion of the one that you didn't do before, and then there was a big charge. So then I had to call them this morning and be like, okay, so you can see that I tapped the 2 terminals, a few weeks ago, 3 minutes apart, and they're like, yeah. So they fixed it, and they're like, yeah, we'll credit properly.
Sure, it happens a lot.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
But it was irritating that they couldn't fix it at the airport. And it was also irritating when I was told at the airport, we'll just go to Union Station when I get there. And I went there when I arrived and dead tired. And they were like, no, you just have to call the number of the company who does the tapping. I'm like, make it so the people who manage, sort of like Compass in Vancouver.
Yeah.
So call Compass as opposed to going to the whatever desk. I'm like, okay, whatever. Just get your stuff straight.
Annoying. Very annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're liking this episode experience, you may also enjoy Experience 9, our first deep dive into 2 different flying experiences. It's available wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Well, our trip out here was nowhere near as wild and eventful as yours, but still a bit annoying. So we're traveling with, a toddler child, which we have to pay for a seat now, which is good. So we booked on Air Canada on the red eye, Vancouver, Toronto, 23:55 departure. The red eye flight scenario is a very North American thing, right? So West Coast to East Coast, whether it be Vancouver, Toronto, Calgary, Toronto, Vancouver to Halifax, Los Angeles, New York, San Francisco, Boston. And the nice thing about it is that, if you can sleep on a plane or you can use that time of night to get across and then either have the full day or access all these connections is great. We're just obviously coming to Toronto.
Are there, sorry to cut in on red eyes, are there red eyes, say from Perth in Australia?
That's I would think so.
Yeah.
It's a similar kind of range.
And I would think
Perth to Sydney?
Or say in Indonesia.
Oh, you mean Australia over to?
Yeah, or just general, because Indonesia is as big as it is. But I think Russia, they obviously have.
Russia has.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen those. So. Yeah. So this flight's just kind of as per normal. So anyway, about 4 hours, I'm obviously checking the inbound flight, which is simply just Toronto to Vancouver, and then we're getting on the opposite return of it, is already delayed coming out. And it showed it maybe a 20-minute delay. I'm like, okay, that's nothing. They'll make that up. And then it just started to creep on and on.
Yeah, so
something was going on here in Toronto. So in the end, it was a 45-minute posted delay. So it was a midnight 0040 departure. I mean, traveling with a 2-year-old, you have a very different way of having to manage this because you're dealing with the child's nap cycles and all. Well, we did a very good job of a few days before, trying to keep him up. And we had him up. He was up. And Vancouver Airport's nice. There's little playground areas and stuff. And all was well. We have a new piece of equipment called the Jet Kids bed box made by Stoke. It's you see these sort of pull along hard suitcase things that the child will ride on and then hold on to a handle. And it's great. And it was gifted to us for his birthday. And so far I've loved it. I mean, just the one flight. And what's unique about this one, a lot of the other ones just go into the overhead or whatever. This turns into an extendable platform for the seat. So it fits into the footwell and you raise it and then it comes like a little mattress pad and you basically are giving the child a lie flat seat, business class style. However, certain airlines don't allow it, Air Canada being one of them, which I found very odd because all the other Canadian airlines have no issues with it. There's a small, I don't know how small, but a list of airlines that theoretically don't allow it. And I went on the Air Canada website and it says, yes, these devices are not allowed. It's okay. But I was thinking to myself, it's a red-eye flight. It's the dark of night. Are they even going to notice?
Yeah.
And I thought, myself as a crew member, if I see this in use, what would I do? Chances are I'd probably just turn a blind eye, most likely. Unless it was becoming an issue because something else was going on with this bag.
Yeah.
Anyway, midnight 40. So they started boarding us at, 12:15 probably.
Okay.
And it was a fast, efficient board. I'm okay, this is good. They sorted us by the zones. They picked us out as a family, moved us into the right queue. Bang, bang, bang. It was fast boarding. I was great. They're making up the time. They're doing all the right things. The crew checking the bags, getting it all lined up, And then we sit.
Oh, no.
And we're sitting, door open. I can look forward. I can see the flight deck doors open. I'm like, here we go. Meantime, 2-year-old is starting to lose patience, or just lose motivation. Because at this point, expecting movement, they're going to get tired. Once a plane, the engines, the roaring, that's part of the whole magic of making a child sleep. We're starting to lose all those tricks out of our bag. And after it had to be at least 10, 15 minutes, captain comes on and says, we are waiting because we don't have any ground crew. The ground crew that's supposed to be for our flight is on another plane, and there's no one else around.
Oh, boy.
Okay. And in my mind, I'm like, why did you board us then? Why didn't you leave us in the terminal to be ready and just do it at the right time? Well, whatever. So it was probably another half hour of sitting that we sat around. So we didn't push back till, I think, 1:10 in the end. Yeah, it was bad. Pushback. Fortunately, we took off from 8 left, so the taxiing was very short. And up and away. I mean, after that, it was fine. The crew was just uninterested, just blah. Classic Air Canada, no customer service. They didn't bother coming with the water service, nothing during like that take off.
Jeez, felt like my 3-hour wait flying to Calgary.
Yeah. And that was it. I mean, then we just fly, and it was a very fast flight time. It was only 4 hours to get across. It was a very good tailwind. It was 737 MAX 8. And the one thing, and I think I'll generally say that because I've flown in the MAX a number of times now, the climate control system on those things, something's up. The overhead vents, usually you can crank it open if you're hot and have like a nice blasting flow of air. This thing is like a baby's whisper of air coming out of it.
Really?
Yeah, you can twirl, and nothing will happen. And then you get like these waves of heat that would come through the plane. Like the balance of it is just off. And our poor son, like he was like crying because he was saying he was hot.
Yeah.
So he flew pretty much the entire flight without a shirt on. And then they would cool down. And then like this wave of heat. And it wasn't just like, oh, it's warm. It's like they put a radiator next to you.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, it was rough. And more on that in just a second. And then we land, fine, come off. And funny enough, Toronto Pearson is not nearly as big as any of the airports you've just mentioned, but we had a bit of a walk to get from the gate to the doors to exit airside to descend to the baggage claim. I think one of the staff driving one of the golf carts, not an Air Canada staff, but like the third party staff that is hired to move wheelchair passengers around. She saw us, and I think she probably saw how tired we were and struggling to keep our child sane. Literally stopped the golf cart and said, "Would you like a ride?"
Oh, nice.
And I could see where we were going. It was maybe 100 meters, if that.
Yeah.
We're like, yes, please. And just that with a child is fascinating, and it resets them. And it was wonderful. And I think she could have been a grandmother, and she was just saying all the right things. It was like maybe a minute and a half ride.
Yeah.
It was nothing. It was really like not necessary, but it was wonderful. So that kind of made things better. And then down and out to the car rental. Where I have a funny story. But before I go about just one thing about this climate control. So today we met up with 2 pilot friends of mine. Both of them are pilots for Air Canada on the MAX. I was mentioning this climate thing, and he was telling me, he's like, yeah, it's tricky. The crew has to stay on top of it and nail the settings for it to be in equilibrium. He said there's something strange with what they've done to automate the system that they really have to make
it's not automated.
That it almost makes it not exactly. Yeah. So he was kind of laughing. Yeah, they hear that a lot. I was like, okay, that's great.
Good to know when I'm on a MAX. It's been a while.
Yeah, exactly. So the last kind of fun little thing that happened is the car rental. So I'm a loving member of National and their Emerald Club. I'm a car guy, and what is nice is that you book in the Emerald Club, you go avoid the counter because all your information is already uploaded. You go straight to the curb, and you can pick whatever car is available there. And they always have an assortment of who knows what. I've driven really nice vehicles away, like way above the car class I've reserved. So I had made this booking for this trip, and it was going to be like $570, I think, for a car rental for a week. And it was high, but it was still cheaper than anything else. Everything else was like almost double at this point. So fine. That was the way it was. About a week ago, I decided, I'm just going to check and see if any specials. And I found Alamo car rental for about 300 and change for a full size car. I'm like, okay, Interesting.
And
Now,
Alamo's in the same group.
Alamo, National, and Enterprise are all in the same ownership group. Like the vehicles themselves are out of the same pool. Like it's not comparing like Avis budget and these. It's the same thing. I was like, okay, I'll just hit reserve. So made sure the reservation was intact. Canceled the National one. Okay, fine. So I came in. I went straight to the Emerald Club aisle, and I just played dumb, saying, "Well, I have a reservation. I can't remember which way I booked it." They're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "It might be Alamo." Just playing dumb. I knew full well what I was trying to do. And they looked at like, "Oh yeah, no, it's an Alamo. You have to go back to the Alamo desk and rent through them. It's a back end thing." I'm like, "Oh, okay, fine." But they knew I was an Emerald member at this point. So I go to the desk. Yes, okay, no problem. Do the whole thing. Rigmarole, sign, check mark. I was like, "Do you assign the vehicle here?" He's like, "No, you go out to the curb to get the car." I'm like, interesting. Okay. So maybe there's another curb that I don't know about. And it was for a full-size car, which was fine for us. I was just like trying to bag an upgrade. So we go out, and the same lady is there. She's like, "Oh, what size car?" I'm like, "Oh, it's Alamo full-size." She's like, "Let me see your contract." Okay. She walks me to the Emerald curb and picks a vehicle and says, "How about this?" I'm like, "Fantastic." And I get a brand new mid-size SUV, and she's like, "Free upgrade." I'm okay. And that was the fun part, is that I sliced the price in half and ended up with the exact same vehicle I probably would have picked had I just gone through the Emerald Club. So
Right.
these are some little car rental tricks that, if you're listening, you can kind of figure out to play the system a little bit, and it works. Yeah.
Excellent.
So we're going to go back on Porter Airlines. Now, one thing, when you're traveling with a toddler, so I'll back it up with Air Canada, they automatically assign seats to you, and it's a way to prevent families from being split up. So good on them, and most airlines do this. You don't pay for those seats, but if you want to change those seats, then you're supposed to pay. So once they assign the seats, then when you go onto your online mechanism, it's going to start asking you for money to move. Fine. So Air Canada had assigned us like the back of the plane, like row 36. I did call in to Air Canada saying, "Oh, can you please move it?" Because I did call in once before last year, and somehow the guy was able to move it. I'm not sure how.
And that was an event.
Yeah. But this time, the guy was like, "No, you need to pay money to move." He said, "Your only chance to go at the 24-hour check-in point, online check-in, and manipulate then." Fine. Which I did. As soon as that clock hit, I was like, I looked at our sequence number. I was like, we are number 4, 5, and 6 to check in. And I moved us all the way right up to row 29 at least. So fine. So I call Porter. I'm like, "Hey, family traveling, can you auto assign the seats now for free?" "Yes, no problem." The girl on the agent, she sounded very young, sounded like a university student, maybe for a summer job. She says, "Okay, sure." And this is a 2-and-2 config. It's their Embraer 195 jets. So she assigned something like row 19 or something. I'm like, okay. So I started to play it faster. I'm like, "Well, I'm looking at your seat map here, and you have these different colors in these different zones. What are those for?" I know full well what it's for. Right at the very front is something called Porter Reserve, and then the middle section is like extra legroom, and then the rest is just
Regular.
So I was trying to bag to get at least into the extra legroom. So she's like, "Oh, yeah, I'm not sure. I'll have to look at it. I'm not exactly sure what you're looking at." And I know full well she's just looking at a computer screen.
Yeah.
That has just like codes and digits and
Yeah, she's got a green screen, not a
exactly.
GUI, right?
She said, "What row were you trying to go into?" I'm like, "Well, how about row 7?" And I hear her click. She said, "Okay, yeah, sure, I've assigned you row 7. I'm like, "Great, thanks, bye." So I don't know if she did something wrong or just omitted something, or that you can just do that. But
or you'll have a story about flying back to Vancouver.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I've been checking every day, and nothing's changed. So we're good. Yeah, exactly. So we'll see how that goes. I've heard good things about their service and their flight, and I guess on our next episode, we'll give them a bit of a review.
I've done short haul, never done a long haul, so interested to see how that goes.
Yeah. So that wraps that.
And then, in 2 weeks, I have a weekend turnaround in Calgary. So hopefully no issues with Air Canada there and back. But
Yep. And then in October, I'll be doing Heathrow run on BA. So I'm looking
nice.
forward to
And
doing that.
in September, I'll do a short haul porter run to Newark. So it'd be nice to look out the one window and see Manhattan and
Yeah, true that. Awesome.
and a flight out of Billy Bishop. I've flown into it, but I haven't flown out of it since COVID. So
Yeah. We're flying out of Pearson. I kind of wish we were going out of Billy Bishop just to kind of add it to the list,
but there's not enough runway space.
no, exactly. So hence we're at Pearson. So there we have it. There's so far the eventful summer of 2023 flying. And,
Exactly, yeah.
We are in the same city, which has been great and a good way to bring 75 episodes so far.
Exactly. We'll see. The next one will be 100, and we'll see what we do.
Yeah, we'll splash out on that.
If you liked this podcast experience, be sure to rate us and subscribe. Tell your friends and fellow travelers about us. Make sure you visit us at podcast.seat1a.org for complete show notes. That's Sierra, Echo, Alpha, Tango, the number 1, alpha.org. Feedback, addenda, letting us know where we've messed up. You can send all of that to stories, STORIES, at seat1a.org. If you'd like to support the show financially, we have a page at Patreon, patreon.com/seat1a. Links are included in the show notes.
What are we talking about in the next few? I think we still have to do a bit more on ticketing.
Well, after all of my stuff, yes, I think we need to
Yeah.
we need to do a review, and it's been a long time since we talked about ticketing, and things have evolved in the way that, in some ways, and stayed the same other ways over the last 4 years or so.
Yeah. We have a mutual friend here in Toronto, and she's worked with Doctors Without Borders, so I think I'm going to pick her brain for some travel stories that I'm sure she's had.
And some of the people I met in Turkey, old friends, and lots of all sorts of people with all sorts of stories. So we're going to make sure that we bring people together to discuss things, and some internal industry people as well. So
yeah, and hopefully we'll get some interviews and see where the road takes us for the next, I guess we can say 25 episodes, so we hit that 100.
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, if, as always, we'd love to hear from you. If you have any topics you'd like for us to discuss, any questions or wild travel stories, please do get in touch. We would be happy to hear from you.
Excellent. So until the next time, I'm Geoff. Thanks for listening.
And I'm Vinod. You are cleared for takeoff. Have a great flight.